This is Katie, and today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be working with the program called Tinkercad. So, Tinkercad is an online open source program where it's easy to register. You have a free account and you can make some basic 3D models. What's nice about this being open source is you do not have to download this on your computer. It works on iPads, and believe it or not, it can actually work on a cell phone. I've tried it on my smartphone and I've made a couple basic things with it. And it's really nice, especially if you're just starting out with 3D modeling and just getting used to the basics of how it functions. And what we're going to do today is we're just going to go through the basics of the program just so everybody can get used to how it works and how to create a basic 3D model that we will print and eventually, we can do things like take a mold of it. Or another thing we can do with the Tinkercad program is it can be used as a sketching medium. What's nice about this is you can view an object that you create in 3 dimensions. You can rotate around the design. So it's really handy for things like sculpture when you're making something 3 dimensional versus doing a 2 dimensional sketch. So let's go ahead and get started with the basics of this program. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click Create New Design. And this is going to take me to my work plane. So what this is my working area. And one of the first things you want to make sure you do is you want to make sure that you change your measurements. Because if you look in the bottom right-hand corner here, it will tell you that we're doing everything in millimeters. And just to make things a lot easier for ourselves, we're going to go ahead and we're going to switch to inches. So I'm going to click on Edit Grid. And you can see right here where it gives me the different measurements. So what I want to do is I want to change it to inches. So now I know that my work plane, I'm working within 7.87 by 7.87 inches. So I can go ahead, update my grid, and here we are. We have a grid that is measured in inches now. So what we can do is we'll take a look at our work plane and figure out just some of the basics that are important for navigating your 3D model. So if you look to the right hand part of your screen here, I'm on the library where it says Tinkercad Basic Shapes. Now if you scroll down, you can see, it gives you some standard shapes that you can use in your model. If you click on the library again, this gives you things that are a little bit more specific. So, if you decide you want to make something a little bit more complicated, you can click on one of these. And this one, for example, is dinosaur parts. So, you could use some of these to create a 3D model of some sort. But today we're going to focus on the basic shapes, and we're going to just play around and see what we have here. So in order to start off with a shape, what I'll do is I click on it and I just drag it over to my work plane. Okay, so what this is telling me is just certain sizes things are listed at, and right now what I can do is if I want to change it, I can click on one of these boxes and physically manipulate the shape. So, I can make a really big, giant square if I like. And then say I want to make it taller. So what I need to do in order to do that is I need to go and change the angle of my work plane, because right now it would be really hard to see, if I'm going to make something taller. So what I want to do is I want to change the angle so I can see things a little bit better. So if I go to the top left-hand corner here, you see this little box where it says top and front. This is how I'm going to change the angles of my work plane. So wherever I have this little blue highlight here, I can click on that and I can just start moving it with my mouse, and that helps me change the angle of my work plane. So I want to make this square a bit taller, right? So what I need to do is I need to raise it up so it goes upward. Now, the easiest way for me to do that is to click on this little cone triangle shape right here. I click on that and I just start dragging. Oops, actually, this one brings it up and down. What I want to do is I want to click on the one that is center in the box. So this will help me make it taller. And then, back to that cone shape, if I want to raise it up and I want it higher above the work plane because maybe I want to put other shapes underneath it, or maybe I just need to move it, that's what the little cone is for. So, I can move that up and down. Okay. So, say I want to have this shape at, maybe an angle that's a little bit more like off kilter, or maybe I want it more at a diagonal. So if you look over here and you see these little arrows that are, kind of like half circles, that's the way I'm going to change the angle of my entire shape. So, if I click on this one and I start moving it, it's going to change the angle of my box here. Okay, so that's how I can change the specific angle of that. Okay, so now that I played around with, just some basic moving and shaping, if I need to do things like know my specific measurements, what I can do is I can hover my mouse over certain spots here like I am right now. So this is telling me that one of my sides is 3 1/4. Whoops, come on. There we go. So I have one side to my left, 3 1/4, or 3 3/4, and then to my right, the other measurement is 4.331. So that becomes really handy, especially, if you're doing a project that has really specific measurements. It'll tell you how big it is when it's going to 3D print. Okay, so another thing that's important for 3D printing is saving material. So if we were to 3D print this specific box right now, what would be difficult about that is it would use a lot of the plastic filament material. So this would all be a solid mass. And what's tricky about that is it's going to eat up a lot of material and ultimately it costs more to make it that way. So what we want to do is we want to save money, we want to save material. So in order to do that, I'm going to need to hollow this out. So what's nice about what Tinkercad does is you can put a shape in another shape and you can use an option called hole in order to carve the shape out. So I'll walk you through those steps now. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to drag another box in here. And you'll notice that the box that I picked, it's not a solid color like the big red one I did before. This is a hollow box, right? So what I can do is if I want to put, a box shape in here, I can go ahead and I can push that into my shape, my original shape, and I can hit Shift and select both of them together. Now, this is really important because um, when I have them together and then I select what's called the group tool, which is what my mouse is over right now. So you can either do Control G or you can select the group tool on your toolbar. And what that's going to do is it cuts a little hole right in that box. So let's go ahead and change the angle of our work plane so we can see that a little better. So, right now it's a small box, but I was able to cut a hole out in it. So now, and now we can see that a little bit better now that I deselected everything, but we have a hole in the box. Now, say we're not really entirely thrilled with the size of that hole, we can change that. It's a pretty easy fix. So right now, what I did was I had the boxes grouped. So that was something I did when I selected this right here or hit Control G, and it put those two shapes together. So if I want to change the shape of the box I made the hole with, I can go ahead and I can do what's called an ungroup in order to get the original shape that I had, and I could change it and maybe carve more of a hole into my original red box shape. So I'm going to do that now. So I made sure everything's selected before I hit ungroup. So now I'm ready to do that. So in order to do an ungroup, you can either select it up here or you can hit Control Shift G. Okay, so now what I did was it brought my shapes back to 2. So if I deselect them, I could select one at a time. So what I did was I selected the box that was going to make the hole. So I want to make it bigger. So I'm going to go ahead and manipulate that. I'm going to see if we can carve out a bigger shape. So let's go ahead. We're going to select both just like we did before. And I'm going to go ahead and hit my group tool. And what that will do is it will cut that hole in my box. So let's go ahead and take a good look at that. So that made a better size hole. Again, it helps a lot with hollowing out shapes so that way you're not using as much 3D print material. Okay, so say I want to make this form a little bit more complicated. I don't have to stick to just boxes. I can pull out other shapes from my library. So, say I want to use a sphere. I can go ahead and throw that in there and kind of merge it with my piece. I'm actually just going to take several of them. Just kind of merge it in. See how that looks. And it's important to keep changing the angles too, because you really want to see, how it's sitting, on your model. So I keep using the sphere shape because I'm looking to make like a fun texture. And I'm going to start varying some of my shapes here. Let's see how that looks. So now I have a little bit of a warty box here. Do one more. Okay. So that's my shape. So again, you have a variety of them, so you can really play around with this and just kind of see what different things you get. So again, Tinkercad's really good for doing all kinds of just basic modeling. And as far as, getting your files for a 3D printer, there's a couple different options that we can do. So when you're ready, these are files that you can download from Tinkercad that are of your object. So typically for 3D printing, we usually stick to .obj or .stls. And what's really nice about that is they're pretty compatible files, pretty easy to do. As far as 3D printers, these are just different kinds of printers that are available. So, we'll be able to do that for your projects. We'll be able to send them off and get them printed. Another thing that's really great about the Tinkercad program is, sometimes you might need another program in order to create your models. Sometimes you have to collage them a little bit. So another program we'll go over is called Sculptress. And what's nice about that particular program is it works really well if you're looking to do things with more organic shapes. It's kind of like a three-dimensional Photoshop in my opinion, and I think it works really well. So say you create a file in Sculptress and you want to merge it with something that's like a little bit more geometrical, which works really well for programs like Tinkercad. So what you can do with that is you can actually go ahead and you can import and you can bring your file into Tinkercad. And you can do a merger of the two if need be. So again, these are both really great 3D modeling programs. This is a really good one just to get started off with, just to kind of get your feet wet in the 3D modeling world.